Some people survive trauma, others become it.
Your father who used your armpit for an ashtray, your mother who never did anything to stop him, or maybe you miss that insect-ridden group home that drove you to my doorstep.
Joe Goldberg was never just a hopeless romantic. He was a manufactured mind, raised on pain, refined by obsession.
You wage war with your own nature. That's just what you do, you know?
Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me you didn't kill Peach. Tell me you didn't kill Peach.
If you knew what I knew.
Every woman he loved became a symbol of redemption, of control, of something he needed to fix.
Who would you be if you didn't have anyone to love?
Quit saying your mom's coming back.
She is.
What did you lose that makes you chase love so much?
But what happens when the mask slips? When love turns lethal?
But you are not special. You're broken. I could never love you. Rot in there, you psychotic asshole.
Was he just a product of his upbringing? Or is he really and truly just pure evil?
So you're fairly deeply damaged. Therefore, you're capable of doing real damage.
And for the one, I would do anything.
Joe Goldberg's origin story is steeped in trauma. He was born into a volatile, abusive, and emotionally unstable environment, conditions known in developmental psychology as complex trauma, or CPTSD, which occurs when a child is repeatedly exposed to hurt, betrayal, and neglect by primary caregivers. And for Joe, the abuse from his father was like torture.
Pain can make people truthful.
His mother, Sandy, wasn't the greatest either. I mean, it's unfortunate that she also had to suffer the abuse of Joe's father, and therefore started stepping out and cheating with other men. But in doing so, she started being a neglectful mother and abandoned Joe. There were times where she would just leave him in public to go and do what she was doing, which messed with Joe's emotions.
We should get a drink sometime.
You're single.
It's complicated.
I'm going out of town tomorrow, but I could take you out tonight.
Tonight doesn't work, but how about now?
Seems like you've got your hands full already.
Oh, he's a big boy. I'm gonna need you to stay here for a bit. Read your book. I'll be back.
He loved his mother and wanted to be with her and protect her, especially from his father. But her love was inconsistent and oftentimes missing. But then there would be a moment that potentially changed everything. Sandy showed Joe that she had a gun in the closet that she said she would eventually use to kill his father.
He's never gonna hurt us again. Ever. You hear me?
This was far from harmless and would be what psychologists would call parental enmeshment, or in this case, maternal enmeshment, which occurs when a mother becomes overly involved in a child's life, hindering their independence and autonomy, often stemming from unmet needs or past traumas. But the problem here is Sandy drawing him into adult conflicts far beyond his emotional capacity at that age. For Joe, his childhood and relationships with his parents created a disorganized attachment style, a blend of anxiety, fear, and a desperate need of love. Children raised this way crave closeness but are also terrified of it. It's the most chaotic and dangerous form of attachment, often linked to personality disorders and violent relational patterns later on in life. Joel was conditioned from the start to associate love with pain. This instilled an unconscious belief that intimacy must be controlled or corrected. Later in life, this manifests as domination masked as protection. However, instead of Sandy having to use the gun, it would be Joe who has to pull the trigger to protect his mother from another one of his dad's beatings, killing him.
Get off of me!
Fucking lie!
Stop!
Tell me his fucking name!
Get away from me! Let go of me, you crazy! Ah!
His mother would tell him that he was a good boy for doing what he did, as he was only protecting her, and this would change everything in his mind. That early exposure to murder, framed as moral and being a good boy, builds the foundation for future desensitization and justification of violence. Joe doesn't just become numb to killing, he learns to associate it with love and duty. And although he probably understands murder is wrong from a societal view, he still justifies the innocence in doing it if he believes he's protecting someone he loves. It teaches him if harm is done for the right reasons, it's not evil. And this is the first step towards moral detachment. Although Joe would protect his mother out of love, she wouldn't reciprocate this affection. Shortly after the killing, she put him in a group home. Even if she had good intentions, to Joe this was straight up abandonment. Despite what he did for her, she just left him. And not only was the person he loved gone, but the place she left him wasn't much better than his home was when his dad was around. He gets bullied by the other kids, but what shapes him most is not just the suffering, it's watching others suffer and being powerless to stop it. A nurse who worked there became someone Joe bonded with. However, he would find out that she was in an abusive relationship, and this reminded him of the situation with his parents. However, with it not being his own family, he felt he couldn't do anything to help, and then blamed himself for not doing so when she later stopped coming to the group home, assuming the worst had happened to her. His bond with the abused nurse deepens his savior complex, or what people refer to as white knight syndrome, which is a psychological pattern where someone feels a strong need to save or fix other people's problems, sometimes at the expense of their own well-being. For Joe, this white knight syndrome would lead to deadly consequences. He developed hyper-empathy for women in pain, especially those who resemble his mother, and this might not seem like a bad thing, but when combined with that desensitization and justification of violence, it meant that in order for him to save these women, he wasn't afraid to kill later down the line, and then use this justification of saving these women. Combine this with his abandonment trauma from his mother's departure, Joe is now primed for the idea that once he finds love, he must control it, trap it, and eliminate any threats to it, because love is always on the verge of leaving. It's safe to say that without a doubt, it was Joe Goldberg's childhood that made him a monster. As a young man, Joe would be taken in by a bookstore owner named Ivan Mooney. He became Joe's guardian and helped guide him through his teenage and young adult years. However, Mr. Mooney wasn't fully a breath of fresh air for Joe, as he too would continue the abuse that Joe couldn't escape from.
I've been stupid to be mad. I messed up. And you're trying to help me do better.
I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes we do difficult things out of caring for someone. It takes discipline to prevail. That's why I work you so hard, why I demand perfection. Love for the books, respect. I'm trying to teach you a code to live by so that you don't end up like your father.
And when I fail, you lock me in.
Exactly. Because I love you.
Mr. Mooney's abuse is perhaps the most important influence on his adult pathology. Mooney feeds him, educates him, but physically and psychologically tortures him, all under the guise of teaching him lessons. This is an example of institutionalized grooming, a child being molded through emotional deprivation and reward punishment structures that warp their ability to distinguish love from manipulation. Joe might have thought that Mooney's control was genuinely out of love and a desire to help, but it was nothing more than, well, control. So later in Joe's relationships, he believed his obsessiveness and control was a form of love, but it wouldn't be his fault. Mooney installs these early mind control frameworks in Joe. The glass cage becomes a metaphor for Joe's adult relationships: contain, observe, control, and punish. Later in life, Joe cages people not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. Joe had been failed by everyone who raised him, so when he was faced with real-world problems, he responded in the worst ways possible. He dated a woman named Candace Stone. However, something somewhere went wrong, and she would end up cheating on him.
Who's Elijah?
Give me my phone, Joe.
He's not your brother, I know that.
Give me my phone back.
Is Elijah going to be there?
Don't start this again. It's just business, Joe.
Yeah, for you it is, but guys like this are predatory.
Unable to process this betrayal like a healthy adult, and being emotionally unstable, Joe killed this man that she was cheating with.
I'm sorry, okay? I had no idea. I thought she was single. Honest to God, man. She never even mentioned it.
More than betrayal, it's the humiliation of being misled that triggers that homicidal rage. He doesn't just kill her lover, he attempts to erase the feelings of being deceived. He needed to do what he could to re-establish control, even in a situation he's clearly lost control of. This is where obsessive love disorder, revenge fantasy, and covert sadism begin to blend. It doesn't do his psychology any favors when Mooney hears about what he did and actually reinforces the behavior, telling him what he did was okay.
Some people deserve to die. I'm sure you had your reasons.
Joe Goldberg's descent begins not with any single one of his traumatic events, but with the relentless, layered abuse that shaped his view of relationships. He never learned how to love, only how to trap, protect, and punish those he loves for their inevitable betrayal. He was raised in a world where control was love, punishment was discipline, and abandonment was normal. This forged a man who could not simply love, he had to possess, and this would be evident in his relationship with Guinevere Beck. Joe, who is now working in Mooney's bookstore, becomes obsessed with her as soon as he meets her in the bookstore. He finds out what he can about her through her social media, and then he starts physically stalking her wherever she went, even including looking through her windows in her home.
The next thing our little friend the internet gave me was your address. There it is, with its big, naked windows. It's nice, too nice. It's like in subsidized school housing. Jesus, it's like you've never seen a horror movie or the news.
In the show, we get to hear Joe's thoughts out loud, and it seems Joe views stalking not as invasive, but as a gesture of love. This isn't merely obsession. It's what psychologists would call erotomania, a delusional disorder where one believes someone else is in love with them, or would be if obstacles were removed. And also with the way he narrates things during the stalking and their encounters, it's like he believes he's the lead in some sort of fantasy romance novel, seeing every natural interaction as some glorified event having an underlying meaning. He doesn't fall in love with real women, he falls for a version he constructs in his mind. And when he does twisted things, like the stalking or going through Beck's phone, he tends to say, "I'm doing this for her," which justifies unethical actions as noble if they serve his fantasy. He also carries out a slick but dark form of mind control often used in the real world. By finding out Beck's secrets through stalking her social media and in real life, he tailors his personality to be that perfect match that she never saw coming. If you know everything about someone, it's much easier to shapeshift and play a character to make them fall for you, and Joe does this effortlessly. Joe's manipulation isn't loud, it's calculated. He presents himself as the ideal man, only to quietly erode his partner's boundaries over time. And he has a few dark psychology tactics to get away with this. One is mirroring. He adopts Beck's values, interests, and literary passions to appear soul connected. Imagine being interested in something really niche, and then someone comes along and shares that interest. You're going to feel that spark brewing, which is what Joe wants. Then there's the gaslighting, when he denies reality when Beck senses that something is off, such as him following her and lying about his past. And he twists the story and makes it seem like Beck is stupid for assuming so. But this whole thing is really just an example of dark psychological seduction, manipulating someone's emotional vulnerability and trauma, in this case Beck's abandonment issues, to install yourself as their savior. Emotionally, he was already a monster, but what he'd end up doing physically only cemented this. During his time knowing Beck, Joe would kill a total of 4 people. His first was a man named Benji. Benji was sleeping with Beck before Joe got to know her properly, making him an obstacle in Joe's path to finding love, something he wasn't willing to lose. He manipulated Benji and lured him into the bookstore before attacking him and locking him in the glass cage in the basement. He held Benji captive for a few days, then killed him by giving him coffee laced with peanut oil, from which Benji would suffer a fatal allergic reaction.
Is it not her?
I'm telling you.
I'm scared. I'm very scared of what you did to her. Anyone loves it? 2 stevia. 2 tablespoons of peanut oil.
The body was disposed of, and Joe progressed his relationship with Beck with one obstacle down. But then another would arise, Peach Salinger, one of Beck's closest friends. When Beck started seeing Joe, Peach tried her best to get in the way. She looked down on Joe for being a broke bookstore worker, and through Joe's stalking and detective work, he discovered that Peach had been manipulating Beck for years, stalking her, controlling her, even taking nude photos of her when she slept. In Joe's mind, she too was preventing him from finding love, so she had to go. He believed that he was saving Beck from a toxic friend, while simultaneously saving himself from abandonment. The next victim wasn't about removing an obstacle, but about delivering justice. Joe had a young neighbor named Paco, a boy raised in a troubled home. His mother, Claudia, was in an abusive relationship with her boyfriend, Ron. Over time, Joe became someone Paco could confide in. He gave him advice, introduced him to books, and tried to make him feel safe. This was one of the only people Joe showed genuine kindness to, without a manipulative end goal, highlighting the potential he might have had deep down. But despite all the guidance, Paco couldn't escape Ron's wrath. He even brutally attacked Joe once before. So one day, when Joe saw Paco in danger, he killed Ron. He reassured Paco, "You're safe now." This moment mirrored Joe's own childhood. A violent man in the house, things becoming too dangerous, and Joe having to kill to protect someone he loves. He had truly internalized that lesson. He disposed of the body and told Paco to keep it a secret. And while this murder might have felt noble, maybe even heroic, the next one was the complete opposite. Beck had grown suspicious of Joe. She dug into his past and uncovered the disappearance of his ex, Candice, and her lover, Elijah, who had also been killed by Joe. She confronted him, but without hard evidence, Joe talked his way out of it with more lies. But that ended when Beck discovered a hidden box containing Benji's phone and teeth, confirming her worst fears. She was with a killer. Her attempt to escape failed. Joe locked her in the glass cage. Not only had she ruined the fantasy by discovering the truth, but she had already betrayed him, cheating on him with her therapist. He kept her in the basement for days. When she got desperate, she managed to stab Joe, but she couldn't escape, and it sealed her fate. These murders reveal Joe's dark psychology. First, they prompt a look at his psychopathy. Beyond the lack of empathy, Joe exhibits high traits of Factor 1 psychopathy, superficial charm, manipulativeness, and shallow emotions. When Beck was in the cage, she asked if he killed the others. Joe replied, "If you knew what I knew."
Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me you didn't kill Benji. Tell me you didn't kill Peach.
If you knew what I knew.
This is classic cognitive dissonance. Knowing your actions are wrong, but continuing anyway by inventing justifications. Joe saw flaws in these people, real or imagined, and labeled them as villains, which made killing them feel justified, even heroic. Then there's the delusional rationalization and self-victimization. Joe doesn't see himself as the villain, he sees himself as the real victim. In his mind, people fail to love him correctly. This is textbook distorted self-concept, often seen in violent offenders. He tells himself things like, "I did what I had to do. I'm just protecting the people I care about. And if they were honest with me, this wouldn't have happened." This overlaps with malignant self-regard, a belief that wrongdoing is moral when committed by the right person. It stems from narcissism and fuels his belief that he's the misunderstood hero in his own story. The worst part, the more he kills, the more desensitized he becomes, which means anyone who stands in the way of his next fantasy is already as good as gone. In an attempt to rebrand himself and wipe the slate clean, Joe moves from New York to LA. He kidnaps a man named Will Bettelheim and steals his identity, going by Will to everyone he meets. Joe is engaging in identity manipulation, and not just for others but to deceive himself. He repeats to himself that he isn't the same man who murdered Beck, that he's changed, and this time, things will turn out differently. But it doesn't take long for him to find a new target. Joe becomes obsessed with a woman named Love Quinn almost instantly, going as far as choosing an apartment where he can secretly watch her from. He engineers a run-in at the grocery store to start a conversation.
All peaches look like butts. I should walk away.
Are you following me?
Shit. I mean, truth. That is what will shut this down. Truth. Not initially, but then yes. I was, completely. I am sorry if I seem skeevy.
No. Anyway, sorry. Love. It's my name, I mean.
No. Cool. It's nice to meet you, Love.
No way.
Yeah. I'll see you in the break room then, Will.
His fixation on Love follows a similar distorted trajectory as Beck, but this time he believes he'll get it right. The deeper issue, Joe doesn't fall in love with people, he falls in love with fantasies. Once again, he uses invasive stalking to get closer to her. She opens up emotionally, making herself vulnerable, which strengthens their bond. Joe's approach mirrors covert seduction, gradually infiltrating Love's emotional world through false vulnerability and tailored charm, only revealing his true self later. Then something unexpected happens. Joe's ex, Candace, returns. It's revealed that Joe once took her into the woods, buried her in a shallow grave, and assumed she was dead. But she escaped. Now she wants to expose him for who he really is, a sadistic killer.
I'm not interested in seeing you dead, Joe. Truly. Or turning you in because best case, you go to prison forever.
I'm hanging up.
I wouldn't. See, you'd go to prison as you. You'd sit there for the rest of your life thinking you're a good man. I'm gonna show you who you really are. And when you see it, you'll beg me to turn you in.
Candace, listen to me. You're insane.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. I'll see you soon.
Candace's reappearance is a direct confrontation of Joe's fantasy world. He's forced to reckon with that delusion that he's not a killer. But instead of facing the truth, he reacts with paranoia, gaslighting, and discrediting Candace at every opportunity. He labels her as crazy, a textbook example of DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender, a manipulation tactic often used by abusers to deflect blame and flip the narrative. Joe attempts to surveil her, silence her, and eventually remove her, though all attempts fail. Candace becomes a threat that he must carefully navigate. Meanwhile, Joe's obsession expands beyond love. He becomes deeply attached to a young neighbor named Ellie. He installs a tracker on her phone and monitors her movements, claiming to himself that it's for her safety.
Full disclosure, I put some family-friendly spyware on the new phone I gave her to protect myself. Crazy the lengths parents have to go to keep an eye on their kids these days. Now, new phone, it's going to help me protect her. I wasn't lying, though. The last thing I want to be in is her business. But I meant it when I said I'll make myself worthy of you. That means not turning a blind eye to obvious cries for help from a child.
This is more than obsession. It's preemptive domination. Joe believes that knowing everything means he can control outcomes and avoid emotional betrayals. He tracks Ellie, Love's twin brother 40, and Ellie's sister Delilah, reducing them to pieces in a game only he understands. From a dark psychology perspective, this is undetected mind control through information dominance. Joe becomes the unseen puppet master, shaping others' lives without their knowledge. Then comes the dilemma with the famous comedian named Henderson. Joe learns that Henderson has been abusing young women. Twisted as Joe is himself, he adopts the role of a vigilante. After breaking into Henderson's house to force a confession, Joe ends up pulling him down the stairs, causing a fatal head injury. This killing is a textbook example of moral disengagement, a concept by Albert Bandura. It's the process by which individuals convince themselves that their unethical actions are justified, and therefore guilt-free. Joe tells himself that Henderson deserved it. He wasn't a victim, he was a predator. By shifting the blame, Joe feels morally entitled to kill. What's critical here is the evolution. Joe no longer kills to protect his fantasy of love, he kills to prove to himself that he's good. It's a dangerous escalation into the self-righteous violence, weaponizing empathy to justify brutality. This is dark moral persuasion, twisting genuine causes like child predation into a justification for illegitimate control and violence. Then comes a horrifying twist. Joe wakes up after being drugged with LSD. In a shocking revelation to him, Delilah, his neighbor, is dead inside the glass cage. He did put her in the cage as she started to find out things about him, but he has no memory of killing her. He's so far gone by this point that he even questions whether it might have been him. Then Candace appears and locks Joe in the cage. He's left alone, spiraling in guilt and facing the monster he's become. But then Love appears. To Joe's complete surprise, Love kills Candace. She confesses that she's the one who killed Delilah. She stalked Joe using a private investigator. She framed a child, Ellie, to protect him. She premeditated the entire thing. As much as Joe stalked her, she stalked him, and she believes that they're soulmates. Joe, the lifelong predator, suddenly feels haunted. For the first time, he isn't the puppet master. Love flips the script, and Joe doesn't like it. He wanted complete control in the relationship, but only if he was the one doing the controlling. When the power dynamic reverses, he deems it crazy. He's prepared to kill her until she reveals she's pregnant. Joe's marriage to Love and the birth of their son Henry is presented as a fresh start, but internally, he's emotionally dead. He dissociates from fatherhood, even stating that he'd hoped for a girl and struggles to bond with his son. This reflects emotional projection. Joe is subconsciously afraid of raising a version of himself. His disinterest in Henry reveals unresolved trauma. He likely sees his son as a symbolic threat, another damaged boy like he was, destined to become violent. Joe sets his sights on their new neighbor, Natalie. His obsession with her isn't just about attraction, It's about escaping the emotional responsibility of his new identity. Joe stalks her, steals personal items like her panties and used tampon, and narrates an entire romantic fantasy in secret. They begin a very tame affair, but when the secret is exposed, things turn deadly.
Raging success. So, what do you think?
You murdered our neighbor in a fit of rage. No regard for the consequences. This today, look, this, you did this. You put our family in danger, love. Where are you going?
I'm going to take care of the baby. You can deal with Natalie. You care more about her than your own son anyway.
Love kills Natalie, but Joel's issue isn't even the murder, it's that he didn't control it. Her impulsiveness violates his illusion that his killings are strategic. Her unpredictability unnerves him more than the blood itself. This marks the fracture in Joel's inner narrative. He's no longer the sole righteous killer. Now he must live with a woman who mirrors his darkness, undermining his power. Love becomes a rogue variable in his fantasy, triggering narcissistic injury, forcing him to become even more covert and manipulative to regain dominance. You can see this clearly in how he gradually falls out of love with her. With Natalie gone, Joe needed a new obsession, and despite claiming he'd changed, he reverts to old habits with Marianne, the local librarian. He volunteers at her workplace, breaks into her house to hide under the bed, and uses his charm to extract information about her struggles so he can solve them and insert himself into her life.
Shit.
Oh, alright. Okay, great.
You're home early, it's very unusual for you. Lipstick. Are you going on a date?
Marianne, who's battling for custody of her daughter after a drug-related car crash, isn't someone Joel truly connects with. She's someone who represents symbolic salvation. She's damaged but redeemable. Joel sees her as a second chance to rescue someone and be the good guy again. Once more, he becomes a master of behavioral modeling, collecting data to shape himself into a perfect man, just like he did with Beck. This is high-level covert manipulation and dark seduction. This is also textbook rescuer syndrome, a compulsive need to help or save others, often at one's own expense. But for Joel, it's weaponized. He doesn't want to love Marianne. He wants to be loved by someone who sees him as her savior. He uses empathy mimicry, mirroring her trauma to lower her defenses. At first, Marianne resents him, believing he's a privileged rich kid.
I have to say, I'm still very unclear as to why he decided to volunteer here. Unless you're one of those parents trying to pad a non-existent community service resume to get his kid into one of the top schools.
But when she learns that he grew up poor and in foster care, her guard drops.
Truth is, we straddled the poverty line my entire childhood, and I escaped with books. I learned all about them, the way you want to know everything about that one beautiful thing. It saves your miserable life.
So I misjudged a little, maybe. I'm sorry. I guess I might have to like you after all, Goldberg.
Joel then executes something disturbingly clever. Knowing he wants to leave love for Marianne, he lets love's attention drift to a young man named Theo. While pretending to be concerned, he inwardly hopes that their connection implodes the marriage. He uses Theo as a distraction tactic, passive psychological warfare, letting chaos unfold while maintaining the appearance of innocence. This is hands-off manipulation at its darkest. By now, his marriage of love is held together by only shared atrocities, murders, imprisonment, lies. But even if love was out of the way, one person still stood in between him and Marianne, her ex, Ryan. Ryan had connections to the judge, which blocked Marianne from gaining custody of her daughter. Joe, once again desperate to be the savior in this fantasy, tracks Ryan down and stabs him to death, framing it as a mugging. This wasn't an emotional outburst, it was a calculated instrumental killing. The goal was clear: remove the obstacle. Ryan was just another pawn in Joe's seduction strategy. This was sexualized elimination, erasing romantic rivals to secure affection and loyalty. Everything was nearly aligned, but then love confronted Joe about Marianne.
You know this, I would do anything.
I know that you cheated on me. And you lied.
Okay, can we...
You made me feel like you really saw me. Like you were perfectly happy. You made me feel like I needed to protect you.
Joe attempts to end it all with honesty. He tells Love he wants a divorce, but at that point, she'd already poisoned him, and he begins to lose motor function. She invites Marianne over, warns her about Joe's monstrosities, and tells her to flee with her daughter. Love then plans to kill Joe, but Joe manages to recover in time and stabs her instead. He kills her and burns down the house. He fakes his death and frames Love for the other murders. It's a brutal, narcissistic end to their twisted chapter. He stages her death, discards their child, and rewrites the narrative to paint himself as the sole survivor. This is the final phase of the narcissistic abuse cycle. Love bomb, devalue, discard. It's also total narrative control. Joe decides who lives, who dies, and who takes the fall. Love never stood a chance. In the long game, she was outplayed by a colder, more calculated mind. Joe's flight to London under the false identity of Jonathan Moore signals the collapse of his internal narrative. He's not just running from law enforcement or consequences, he's running from himself. But the psyche doesn't forget, and what unfolds is a masterclass in identity dissociation. Joe exhibits signs of dissociative identity fragmentation. The Jonathan Moore persona is a fragile mask, a self-imposed illusion to suppress his violent urges. But the more he resists, the more forcefully they re-emerge. This is narrative death and rebirth, a form of self-brainwashing where the subject tries to overwrite who they really are by forcibly assuming a new persona, repressing dark tendencies until they inevitably resurface. In London, the tables turn. For once, Joe isn't the predator, he becomes prey. A man named Reese Montrose, an aspiring mayoral candidate, appears to be hunting him. Reese kills people around Joe and manipulates him into covering it up. He sends threats, stalks Joe, and eventually locks him in a secret basement. At least, that's what Joe's brain wants him to believe. Reese is a real person, but he isn't the one doing these things. The version of Reese that Joe sees is a hallucinated alter ego, an externalized manifestation of Joe's killer instinct. Reese doesn't ask Joe to kill, he really reflects the choices Joe already wants to make. If you're not following, all the people that were dying around Joe that appeared to be killed by Reese were actually killed by Joe, but Joe didn't want to accept that it was his actions. This aligns with the distinction between ego-dystonic and ego-syntonic psychopathology. Early Joe believed his urges were foreign, unwanted. He framed his violence as necessary or heroic. But Reese reveals the truth. Joe doesn't reluctantly kill, he enjoys it. His dark side is ego-syntonic, aligned with his core identity. Joe isn't a good man struggling to stay good. He's a monster, looking for justification. Reese becomes Joe's internal hypnotist, a seductive voice that reaffirms moral detachment. His advice, tone, and manipulation represent internalized mind control, reshaping Joe's morality in Joe's own image. While not a textbook case of dissociative identity disorder, Joe develops clear split personality symptoms, amnesia around murders he committed, visual and auditory hallucinations of Reese, and compartmentalized moral beliefs between Joe and Reese. Joe's most psychologically unstable state to date. His violence becomes autonomous, even unconscious. He enters dissociative fugue episodes, mental blackouts accompanied by purposeful, violent actions he later wakes up from. At this point, Joe is experiencing psychological possession. His mind is hijacked by the persona he created. It mirrors cult-like trance states, seen in groups like the Manson family, where killers operated on autopilot. Under this hallucinated state, Joe continues to kill, strategically and without remorse. Vic, a bodyguard, is eliminated to remove an obstacle. The real Reese, who never actually killed anyone or threatened Joe, is killed during interrogation.
You're gonna confess everything, starting with, where is Marianne?
I don't know anyone called Marianne. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
You know who I am. You know what you've had me do.
For you! I've let her go. I stepped away. I was starting over. Where is she? Tell me where she is. Tell me or I'll kill you. You fucking psychopath. Tell me.
Tom Lockwood, a powerful businessman, is murdered to keep Joe's secret safe. These are not reactive crimes, they're instrumental homicides. Cold, calculated, and strategic, Joe has fully entered the predator class of killer. He now treats murders as reputation management. This mirrors Machiavellian tactics of power consolidation, eliminate liabilities to preserve the illusion. He also tracks down and kidnaps Marianne. Joe cages her, fully aware of what he's doing, but convinces himself that it's Reese pulling the strings. He leaves her a bottle of pills, and later stages her overdose by placing her on a park bench, expecting the world to see it as a tragic suicide. But Marianne was actually the one who planned for this to happen, and survives. She takes enough beta blockers to appear dead. Marianne escapes and returns to Paris, to her daughter, Juliette. When Joe believes Marianne is dead, he experiences deep grief, but it's not grief for her, it's grief for the loss of his fantasy.
I know you won't.
And why's that?
You wage war with your own nature.
That's just what you do. You have this notion that you're an especially bad person. Join the bloody club. What do you think everyone else sees in the mirror?
I think I've killed a lot more people.
You are a stellar example of the human condition. Traumatized brain, constantly trying to shame us. That's what you need to fight, the shame.
I should be ashamed.
No, that's why I'm fucking standing here trying to untwist you before you kill us both.
This is narcissistic grief, mourning what she represented, not who she was. He blames Reese for her death, even though it was his own doing. This is pathological projection, assigning his darkest actions to an imagery villain in order to preserve the delusion that he's still a good man who just wants love. Eventually, the weight becomes too much, and Joe decides he's lost control. His fractured mind drives him to jump off a bridge in an attempt at suicide, but he survives. When he wakes up, he doesn't see himself in the reflection. He sees Reese. Joe's suicide attempt isn't an act of guilt, it's the final purge of the old self. He doesn't jump to die, he jumps to shed his skin. When he emerges from the water, reborn, he fully embraces who he is, a killer. This is symbolic of ego death. The illusion of being a morally conflicted man dies, and what remains is someone who has accepted psychopathy as his core identity. It's a metamorphic darkness, a transition where empathy is abandoned in exchange for psychological invulnerability, the final stage of moral dissociation. By the end of season 4, Joe Goldberg is no longer deluded. He is no longer confused, regretful, or tortured. He is self-aware, fully integrated. His hallucination of Reese still watching from the window is not paranoia, it's acceptance. I am the monster in the mirror, and now I've made peace with him. He hasn't just embraced the dark triad, he is the dark triad, warped in a charming smile and a clean record. And as season 5 fast approaches, we'll finally witness the true downfall of Joe Goldberg.